signs of maturity is that you have power in God to become detached. That's one of the first signs. But if there's still any clinging, you're only going to wreck the thing. It'll only be partial. He says, bring them to me. Well, here's one little fish, doesn't look very good. I think I can teach them. Bring them to me. Well, this little loaf looks kind of scorched, and I don't think you can do. Bring them to me. Well, this loaf looks, bring them to me. But Lord, this loaf, bring them to me. Will you please stop your arguing with God? Please stop it. If he says bring them, then bring them. He says, I knew you before you were born. I know all that. But please bring them to me. That's all he wants. That's all he wants. I never knew what that meant because it happened to me that I couldn't relate it. You see, I was not born in Pentecost. I never had seen it or heard of it. I never had seen a person baptized in the Spirit when God baptized them. I'm so glad I hadn't. There wasn't anyone saying, now say glory, glory, glory. There's no one fussing over me, thank God. No, not at all. I had never seen anyone filled with the Spirit. Never seen anyone baptized. I had never heard a Pentecostal sermon in my life. But you know, the Lord has a way of isolating you when he's after you. And before he could fill me with the Spirit, before he could fill me with this marvelous Spirit of life and light, before he put me through a most grueling, terrifying consecration. This was before he was preparing the soil. People often say, well, why doesn't this person go? Why is this doesn't move? They've all been baptized. I said, listen, don't you know God has to have something to baptize when he baptizes? Don't you know he does? Yes, he has to have something to baptize. He couldn't baptize me as I had come along that way. No. He shut me up till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning on the floor. I had never seen anyone get on their knees and lie down and pray. Methodists don't do that way. But you know, when the Spirit moves on you, how many know it doesn't matter about the posture of your body? You could be flat on your back or on your stomach or almost anywhere when prayer goes on in you. And here was this awful groaning for God. I was saved, but God wanted to do something in me before he could really fill me with his Spirit. And you know what it was? It was just this. I never had related it before in my life. I had experienced it, but I didn't know it had any relation to anything in here. All through that evening, until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, down on my face before the Lord, I was conscious of the Lord. I never knew he could talk to people because I never had been taught that. I didn't know about that, but I knew if there was ever anything real in my life, here was the presence of God dealing with my immortal spirit. And when he began to deal with me, it was not concerning sins and failures and all that. That had been taken care of. I was a Christian already. He was beginning with all of the legitimate issues in living, all of the right things, all of the correct things, all of the good things, to which I might become attached in some way. Family. During that period, of those 3, 4, 5 hours that I was on the floor before God, I buried every one of my relatives. I wept all my tears for them right then. My heart was broken for them right then. And I buried them. I never had any of that anguish when any of my loved ones go, because that's all gone. That's all been taken care of. That's all taken care of. My sister was the first one to go in the family. And I was way off out of town. I was in college, away from home. And he said the telegram, I felt God so wonderful that when they said, would you like to see Mabel? I said, yes. And the first thing I did was to stand and sing. Wasn't that strange? I just couldn't help it. I just sang to the Lord. There was such a sense of victory and triumph. The undertaker came and took me by the shoulders. He thought that I was demented or something to take me out of the room. I wanted to say, brother, if you only knew what I know now, you wouldn't even touch me. Well, he did that. All the legitimate things. I like schooling. I like schooling. I was born from folks that liked schooling. My father was a teacher at the time, his grandfather. We all liked intellectual things. And he said, no, that isn't it. You are to surrender that. I surrendered that night things in scholarship that today Pentecost is all yowling to get, and I can't understand it. I can't understand it. Maybe our patterns are different, but when God dealt with me to separate me unto himself, to fill me with his Spirit, he swept all of that thing completely out of my life. Now I have that. I don't belittle it. I like my degrees as good as anyone. You've never seen me use a degree, have you? You never will. I'm a college man. You'll never see me use that. God doesn't want any of that in my life. He doesn't want it at all. Not at all. Not long ago, I came across a little box of some of my credits, my college credits, and here were all my credentials. I could have 2 degrees easily now, you see, isn't it? No, he says, you don't need them now. I'm going to do something with you where that will never figure at all. You're coming out of that. You're coming out of that. I don't want you mixed up with it at all. And when I find our people going over into that sort of a thing, I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't understand it. Now, I'm not depreciating education. I think it's splendid if you can have it and keep it where it belongs. But if it's going to become a substitute in any way of a build-up where God is dropped out, then I say, don't do this. I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid of the results of it. It took my social life. Now you'd like to get into my romances, wouldn't you? Well, never mind, dear. I don't create those in public. I'm very human and very normal and very natural. I had my friends too. And I would like to have had a home. In the natural. He says, you're not going to be in the natural, see? Now you surrender all of this to me. Let it be detached. I don't want any of these things in you. I want you. And for at least an hour or more, the only thing he said to me as I lay there upon the floor was, would you fall into my hands? All I want is to possess you. Will you fall into my hands? All I want is to possess you. Will you fall into my hands? All I want is to possess you. That's all he ever asked. He never asked me to preach or to teach or to sing or dance or pray. He never asked me any of it. Those things have come automatically as a result of something, but it was never an issue. No. I want you. If God could actually get a hold of people in this room this morning, actually get a hold of them, without some of this religious collateral, how many know we wouldn't need to pray for a revival? It would be present. It would be present. It would be present here. It would be a beautiful spiritual revival. not one which has been mechanized. So you see, that preceded even my baptism. What was he doing? He was doing this. He was detaching me from any village experience. You need not go to any village. You bring life, bread, fish, the potential. You bring that to me and let it get into my hand. That's all I ask of you. Will you let me possess it? That's all he ever asked. And when I surrendered and I felt this is the most real thing I've ever found, though it's wrecking my life and absolutely taking everything I've ever thought completely out. I was as empty as a barrel with both ends knocked out of it. I actually was. Well, I said, all right, now what? So the next night he filled me with the Spirit. Now you see, he had something to work on. He had something to work on. So since then, I've never dared, I don't want to. If you really glimpse reality, how many know there's no temptation to go into anything else? You just don't want it. There's no temptation. You have seen reality. You have seen reality. And so with this, he says, let me take this provision. Well, now, listen, get this. What did he do with it? He accepts it, he blesses it, he breaks it. That's a terrific thing. He took it and he blessed it and he broke it all to pieces. Well, who wants their life wrecked? Nobody. Self-preservation is too present. Nobody wants that. But he says, I can't feed unless it's broken. And so he breaks it all to pieces. And then on top of it, he passes it out to a multitude. Isn't that something? Yeah. Now get this. When he started to feed those people, he asked for this consecration and surrender, which is absolute and eternal. And the life is put into his hands. How many of you know he uses that same bread and fish? Do you get it or don't you? How many of you see that he said, well, now you've given me the bread and fish. That's very pretty. Presto, here's the bread of heaven. He did no such trick as that. He used the identical bread and fish which you give. But it is no longer living under the power and impulse of this creature. It's bread and fish which is put into the hands of God. It's a consecrated bit of bread and fish. And these crying multitudes within you, now let me help you. These urges and these desires, fundamental, light drive, clear, beautiful, and in the spirit, some of them are tremendous. The vast drive that it has. Now listen, that radiates from this bread and fish. Do you get me or don't you? How many know he didn't have something else to feed them? He fed them with the bread and fish. He will bring a satisfaction in your heart and life if your heart and life can be consecrated, separated, and filled with the Spirit of God. He can bring the satisfaction out of the very elements that you have. Absolutely can. Absolutely can. He did it here. He didn't introduce any other element. He used the identical elements. But they were blessed of God. They had become holy. They were sacred. They were the medium that he's going to use, but they're in his hand. Our hands are off. He breaks it. I don't tell about the tragedies. That's no one's business. You don't publish your suffering. You manage them. Is that deception? No, it's scriptural. If you fast, if you are denied, if you are compelled to go without, if God calls from you a denial, that's fasting. If your soul is exposed to fasting, I'm not talking now about fasting, going without bread and butter. If you, in spirit, are called upon to fast, to be denied, to go without legitimate food, proper food, good food, not sin, good food, God-ordained food. If you are called upon to fast, let your fasting be done here. When you come out, anoint your face with oil. You get it or don't you? How many see the mask or don't you? Do you get it? Do you get it or don't you? You don't come out and say, I'm almost killed. No, you come out and say, isn't the Lord wonderful? People say, how do you get things from God? How do you know about the Lord? Well, I said, you see, I come out, but you don't see me home or when someone else, don't you? Oh, God! You don't hear all that going on. It comes out here. The Lord is beautiful. How many of you get the point, or don't you? Do you think I get things to peddle out to you by sitting in a little trance saying, come sweet Jesus, talk to me, 1, 2, 3, bumblebee? No, I don't do that. You have to learn to wear a mask. How many know it's a holy mask? It's a legitimate mask. But you see, he didn't introduce any other elements at all. He used the very same bread and fish. He will use what you offer to him, that God can so work in your heart and life that these things that are in you will be satisfied in there by the very thing which you offer. Do you get it or don't you? It's a strange analysis, but it's there. How many are getting anywhere this morning, are you? I'm plowing a little bit, but you have to plow once in a while. I want you to get in there to see it. So here, this I must write it on the blackboard. Of course, this wouldn't be teaching if I didn't. What do we call this one? I called it provision, didn't I? Yes. How many are getting something about provision this morning? How many know he didn't say, presto, and down comes some bread? He didn't. He took you, and he took me, and he wrecked our lives. He just wrecked them. Do I cry about it? Oh no, I've got something to sing about, brother. I have something to sing about which I would not exchange for all the world. For all the world. I don't want it in sympathy. I'm not crying for sympathy. Poor brother bless. Provision. Now, where will this be? This will be John 6 and 5. And that's where it says, what will we do to feed them? Oh, I forgot what time it is. Oh, I got people. I want to read you something. This plowing business. I want to read you a poem God gave me one time when he had been plowing me. And you see, we have to be plowed to get anywhere. I was brought up in the country, of course, and I've walked in the furrow from plowing more than once with my bare feet, because I went barefooted so we could have shoes in winter, you see. Don't wear them all out in the summertime, go barefooted. So we lived in the country, and I lived on the farm, and I went barefooted. And Dave was our man who helped Dad on the farm, and he used to plow, and I thought it was so wonderful to walk along behind him in that furrow. How many can smell fresh ground when it's plowed? Put up your hand. Oh, God bless you. I love every one of you. How many know we have a little secret that a lot of folks in the city don't have? Sure. That lovely fresh soil that's turned to the sun. Well, now, I had walked in those furrows many times, And I had noticed the soil that he would have to plow. Now, sometimes we have in the country what we call running blackberries. How many have ever seen them running blackberries? Not the stalk kind, but the running kind. How many know the prickers on them? They are terrifying. Oh, well, I know them too. And so sometimes the plow would have to go right through a patch of that old rambling, running blackberries, and oh my, did they ever sting. And of course we were awful careful walking in them bare feet. You watch out after you've been in 2-3 times. You watch very carefully. So I knew that story too. And so when God spoke to me about, oh mercy, I had the poem here. I had it here. Here, Lord, help me find it. I want to read it to you because it's what really happens to us. Now, in order to gain any harvest in you and me, how many know you'll have to be plowed? That's hard. Well, there's all kind of plowing. How many know what a plowshare is? You know the point? The plowshare? Yes. How many know you have one for light plowing? And how many know you have one for garden plowing? How many know you have for the sod? I know. How many know when one strikes you, or don't you know that either? How many know when one of those strikes you, or don't you know? How many know people are plowed like that? They have a surface plowing, a semi-depth, and a deep plowing. And I found that out because of the plowshare. So when he had plowed me, I knew because I had been in it. And so he gave me this one day. Just when I write, I don't sit down to study, but the Spirit of God releases me, and I sing. And I sung this out in just a few minutes. God's plow struck deep within my heart and plowed long furrows, one by one, through fallow ground so hard and firm, from early morn till set of sun. The plowshare was eternal truth, which tore the hidden roots in me and turned them to the light and air, till selfhood laid a field set free. I felt him walk each furrow plowed. I knew he felt the briar's sting. The field was his. It was his joy. For lo, I heard the plowman sing. He only plowed that he might sow. There must be seed to scatter wide. And then I felt his presence near. He stood in silence at my side. And so I gave him all of me, my hopes, dreams, and inner throne. All these he scattered far and near, and left me naught to call my own. They fell like seed in furrows deep, and all were buried neath the sod. All that I had went down in death to wait the mighty breath of God. He did not leave me then alone to mourn the loss of earthly things, to be thus stripped. To be thus stripped gave greater place for life His radiant, beautifully, His radiant presence bring. How could I grieve for a heart thus plowed? I covet now no sweeter thing than wait with him the harvest day. And in the meantime, hear him sing. Do you like that? How many feel God in it? Well, God's in that. That's truth. That's truth. To do what? Watch for my harvest? To have it published abroad? To be counted as this? No. No. That's all God's business. That's all God's business. If he buries it, he will bring forth the harvest. I covet now no sweeter thing than what? Wait the harvest day, and in the meantime, hear him sing. How many know he will sing over you? He rejoiced, he said so. He sang over Jerusalem. Rejoiced over it. He does that.